Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan and today we are going to be redrafting the top 15 of the 2017 NHL Draft with a ton of players like Cale, Makar, Elias, Pettersson, Miro, Heiskanen becoming elite players in the National Hockey League. It's about as good a time as ever to look back to the 2017 Draft, look at what went wrong and what would happen if the draft were to happen today. So, when it comes to the top 15 in 2017, who do I see as the best players from the 2017 Draft and which players make today's top 15? Watch till the end for the complete 2017 draft rankings and make sure to hit that subscribe button if you are new. 50% of the people that are watching are not subscribed, so if you like hockey and if you want to see the 2016 redraft, make sure you hit that subscribe button for the best hockey content around. And without further ado, let's get straight into it. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys, the 2017 NHL draft class is really weird. I mean, we're 5 years ahead of the 2017 draft, but there's been a lot that's changed, and especially this year, a lot that has happened inside the top 15. And you'll kind of see as we get into the latter half of the top 15, there are still so many question marks with how this 2017 draft class will develop. But going under the number one spot and the best player of the 2017 NHL draft, there's very little doubt, very little confusion, and very little question marks that both now and in the future, Cale Makar is the best player of this draft. Originally drafted 4th overall by the Avs, and if you remember, the Avs were last place in 2017 and they lost the draft lottery, the worst they could have lost it, going all the way to the 4th overall pick, but eventually still got the best player in the end. And really since his rookie year, Cale Makar has developed so well in all the little details of his game, and this season in 72 games as a D-man has 26 goals, or now 27 goals against the Seattle Kraken, 57 assists for 84 points. He's been absolutely amazing, will continue to be, and is getting a lot better, especially defensively over these past couple of years. In my opinion, with the skating, with the raw fundamentals, with just how much potential he provides, in my opinion, he'll easily win multiple Norris trophies throughout his career and will be the number one player of this draft looking back on it. But now let's get cooking and go on to the second overall spot and the second best player of the 2017 draft. We already know that Cale Makar is number one, and I don't think there's many questions surrounding that spot. But going on to number two and the second best player of the 2017 draft class, it's really between two players in Miro Heiskanen and Elias Pettersson. Pettersson being likely one of the best centermen in the next decade. Same thing with Heiskanen and defensemen. In my opinion, you could go either way at number two, but I am biased as a Stars fan, but I would still pick Miro Heiskanen at the second overall spot. At age 22, Heiskanen, in my opinion, defensively, is already a top 10 defenseman and has a lot of conversation, and I think deservedly so, being around maybe that 8th spot, 7th spot, 6th spot. I think he deserves to be up there among the NHL's elites. And in terms of the little things, in terms of the small defensive plays, Heiskanen is truly the king of it. Although he has fantastic skating, he's not a flashy player by any means, but gets the job done as one of the most efficient players out there and uses his skating, uses his fantastically big brain to do all the smart things for the Stars. This year, again, he's not going to be a flashy player and the points are going to jump out at you, but he still has 4 goals, 30 assists, 34 points in 64 games played. He's a guy that I just love watching every single night, and he is truly one of the better defensemen for this next era. A guy that can play so soundly defensively while also keeping up with skating and keeping up with the offensive capabilities. But next up, let's move on to the third overall pick and the third best player of the 2017 NHL redraft. With the third overall pick, I will select Elias Pettersson. And obviously, this is the next pick here, and I think it's pretty easy to see why. Although Pettersson had a really slow start to his NHL season, he's come back with an absolute vengeance and has been so key to the Canucks, even being in the conversation still for the NHL playoffs. He was drafted 5th overall by Vancouver and reaches up a couple more spots. At the time was looked at as a decent reach for the Canucks, not one of the more hyped up players inside the top 5, but obviously in Sweden he developed fantastically and has done very well with the Canucks. And this season, in 75 games, he has 29 goals, 34 assists for 63 points. In terms of potential, I think Pettersson deserves to be in this category, deserves to be in the top 3. In my opinion, centerman-wise, he has such a unique skill set. He's so quick, he's so slippery, he's so juicy with that shot. It's always so interesting to watch and so fun to watch too. He's a guy that's going to be an absolute dynamite player for the Canucks over these next 10.5 years, and I really hope the Canucks are able to maximize his potential. But now let's move on to the 4th overall pick, and it's interesting because inside the top 15 for 2017, there's a lot of top-end talent that often is pretty underrated throughout the entire entire NHL. And I think a great example of that comes in at number 4 with my boy Jason Robertson, who's burst onto the scene over these past couple of seasons and has been an absolute offensive powerhouse for this Dallas Stars team. Originally drafted 39th overall by the Dallas Stars in the 2017 draft, had an amazing season in the OHL in his draft year and would continue to have great seasons, but in his draft year the skating was a big issue, and it was often a question of if his pace of play would fit the NHL style. We're obviously seeing the improvements in his skating, and we're obviously seeing that he can flow with NHL players, and at age 22, in 69 games so far, he has 37 goals, 35 assists for 72 points. Robertson is the real deal, and it's not just the pace of play that he's improved vastly throughout the last couple of years, it's also the skating, it's also just the electrifying hands that he has and the quickness in his decision making. He's a guy that can lead a line, push play on any single blind in the NHL, and you're seeing just how much of an effect he has on the first line for the Dallas Stars. In my opinion, you also combine that with some solid defense and some good fundamental abilities, and to me, Robertson is one of the bigger second round steals over the past decade. But now let's move on to number 5 and go to the player right behind Jason Robertson, and I mean just behind. These two players are going to be absolutely amazing and will lead their team Central Division wise into the future offensively. Next up at number 5 though, I'm going to go to a player that was drafted 20th overall in the 2017 draft in Robert Thomas. Another fantastic pick that went way too late. Thomas has really truly broken out this season, where in 67 games he's got 19 goals, 55 assists for 74 points, being among the league leaders in playmaking abilities and just raw fundamentals. He is so fun to watch though, so creative, and it's so interesting to see what he comes up with every single night, but the playmaking efficiency he has is fantastic, and I think that'll be definitely something that'll lead the league in or be among the league leaders in over this next decade. The thing when it comes to Thomas though, I mean, last year in 33 games, he had 12 points, and the start of his career was looking way too inconsistent for my liking, but since he's had this season, I'm hoping to see that stick, and if it does, I think he's not just one of the better forwards, but one of the best players to come out of 2017. Now let's move on to number 6, and I want to give a disclaimer here because this part of the 2017 redraft is honestly wide open. I mean, this player in some people's lists could be as high as number 3, and I could see where they're coming from. I have them at number 6, but I definitely think that they have a lot of talent to give and have been great for the Devils this season. At number 6, I'm going to go with the first overall pick in 2017 in Nico Hischier. Now, again, I do not want to discredit Nico Hischier whatsoever because he has been great for the Devils on a horrendous team, and I want to give the credit where it is due, but also some players have leapfrogged him a little bit since his draft year, and although he's dealt with some defensive inconsistencies, some of that definitely is on the Devils and their overall success since he's been there. But this year in 67 games, he has 20 goals, 38 assists, 58 points, being the captain there, he's trying his best. I just hope to goodness gracious the Devils are able to give him a team that actually can succeed, because I mean, this guy's deserving it. He's been on this team for so long. He's been the captain for 2 years now. He deserves to have some actual substance around him, and I really do hope that the Devils are able to bring that, and Hischier's production will also improve when that comes. Now, let's go to a sneaky pick inside the top 15 originally in the 2017 redraft that's also risen up quite a bit since then. We're going to go to a player originally drafted by the Vegas Golden Knights, 13th overall, but traded to the Montreal Canadiens and has so far done really well in his NHL career in Nick Suzuki, coming in at number 7. Now, in my opinion, I couldn't really justify Nick Suzuki being over Nico Hischier, but I still love Suzuki quite a bit, even though his defensive play and 5-on-5 play has taken a little bit of a dip since Marty St. Louis has gotten there, and I think that's a pretty underrated story. Still, in the end, Nick Suzuki on a fairly inconsistent and pretty weak Canadian squad over the years has done great and has really proved himself as a top 6 centerman. I mean, last year in the playoffs, for example, in 22 games, he had 7 goals, 9 assists for 16 points, was playing all-star defense, was being fantastic there. Even though this season has been in consistent form, he's still gotten 20 goals, 37 assists, 57 points in 77 games on this Montreal Canadiens team. I think he'll be just fine, and I'm hoping to see that defense and overall abilities turn into a great first-line centerman. Now, let's go on to one of my favorites here, and another top centerman here at number 8 in Josh Norris. Now, interestingly enough, just like Nick Suzuki, he was a top 20 pick that would eventually get traded teamed this time with Josh Norris. He was a part of the Erik Karlsson trade and is looking like a huge part of that package going back to the Sens. And at age 22, I love what Josh Norris brings. He was a rookie last year, playing 56 games and getting 17 goals, 18 assists for 35 points. I thought he was an extremely underrated rookie last time around. This year in 2022, he's stepped up his goal scoring ability a lot, where in 61 games, he's gotten 33 goals, 18 assists for 51 points. Although that shooting percentage look is eventually going to go down, Josh Norris has so many great raw abilities that I think he will be a top-line centerman for the Sens in the future. Alongside Tim Stützle, Brady Tkachuk, whatever game you want Norris to play, he can provide that and adapt to it, and that makes him such an interesting center for this Sens rebuild going into the future. Alongside Shane Pinto, that center core isn't looking too bad, but Josh Norris will be leading the way with great face-off ability, good skating, and fantastic positioning every single game. Now, let's move on to the 9th overall pick, and you can kind of notice throughout this list, besides Jason Robertson, all these players have been, or originally were selected in the first round of the 2017 draft, still inside the top 10 and still being fantastic, but none of these guys besides Robertson are truly fantastic steals until we go on to this next pick at number 9 and go on into one of two amazing steals in the 4th round of 2017 in Drake Batherson, another Sens player. He was originally drafted 121st overall by the Sens, and almost immediately after that was looked at as a pretty great steal. I mean, in 2018, he was great in the QMJHL, and eventually that season would play in the World Juniors for Canada, where in 7 games he got 7 goals and would continue to develop with the Belleville Senators, immediately making an impact. And this year, he's been fantastic with 41 games under his belt, 15 goals, 25 assists for 40 points. I mean, his point per game pace earlier in the year was even more nuts if I recall correctly, but this guy, in terms of overall awareness, playmaking ability, and offensive power play potential, there's so much to like with Batherson, with his speedy skating, with his quickness on the ice. He's going to be such an influential part of that power play and top 6 for the Sens in the future. Although I don't know if he'll still continue on that pace over these next few years, I think you can count on him to provide top 6 production, being around 60, maybe 70 points a year, and honestly, to get that in the 4th round is about as good as you could ever ask for. But now let's move on to a special one, not just because they're the 10th overall pick in the 2017 redraft, but also because they're the first of 2 goaltenders on this list, going on to the number 10 spot and going on to the 3rd Dallas Star. Next up at number 10, I have Jake Oettinger, who was originally the first goalie drafted inside the first round of this draft, or even in the draft entirely, 26th overall by the Stars, and the Stars actually reached up to draft him and select him at number 26, and so far, it's paid out pretty well. At age 23, most goaltenders are still entering the NHL, still really trying to find their way, and although Oettinger has definitely not been perfect by any means, at 6'5", he has been brilliant this year. In 44 games, he's got a .913 save percentage. He's struggled a little bit over these past couple of weeks, but in my opinion, if you watch the Dallas Stars every single day, you would know that if it weren't for Jake Oettinger, this team would not even be close to the NHL playoffs. He has carried them so much, especially early in the season. He was absolutely lights out, and in my opinion, he deserves to be inside this top 15 and even inside the top 10. He's going to be a fantastic starter. He's going to be a consistent one, and although the Stars have definitely ruined his save percentage a little bit, him having a .913 save percentage with this Stars team is pretty miraculous, and he's shown some great things thus far. But now let's move on to number 11, and the 11th best prospect and player out of the 2017 NHL redraft. Let's go on to a guy that's pretty much been the definition of inconsistent throughout his NHL career so far, but a guy I still think has a lot of belief in him and a lot of talent in Marty Necas. Now, Necas was a 12th overall pick by the Canadiens in 2017, and he reaches just 1 spot above. He really burst onto the scene and broke out in 2021, getting 41 points in 53 games played, but this year has been a lot more lackluster, where in 73 games, 20 more games than he had in 2021, he's only gotten 36 points. He's seen a little bit of a drop-off in time on ice and overall quality there, so that does play a part, but I think his consistency, and especially his defensive play, has taken a little bit of a nosedive there. I still think there's so much potential, so much speed and energy you can get with Necas, and an overall clutch factor that he brings, but at the same time, he's a guy that might still be a little bit of a project and is one of the guys still really developing and is in this draft class. I mean, I still think he deserves to be in the top 15 for what he's shown so far, but there are still question marks. Now, let's go on to one of the most interesting prospects of this 2017 draft, especially looking back on it. A guy that at number 12, I think has been absolutely elite this season, out of nowhere, in Timothy Liljegren. Now, Liljegren was originally drafted 17th overall in 2017, but he had mono during his draft year, and before the season was looked at as a potential top 5 pick of that draft class and would eventually start to slip. He was drafted by the Leafs 17th overall and had some major production and overall development problems. He was stuck in the AHL for a while, although he was ready for a bit there, wasn't quite getting the opportunity in the Leafs he probably deserved to get, but now has burst onto the scene at age 22 and has been fantastic this year. In 57 games, getting 5 goals, 17 assists for 22 points, while also putting up rock solid defense and overall being a sturdy and consistent and mature really presence on that ice, which I think is pretty incredible for a 22-year-old D-man. He's a guy that's seen a lot of Rockies so far, and although he's been a little bit sheltered this year for sure, he's a guy that I don't really have many doubts will turn into a top 4 D-man, potentially a middle pairing guy for the Leafs, and with what he's shown so far, the future is incredibly bright. Let's go on to the 4th round goaltender that is making an absolute name for himself in Jeremy Swayman, going from a Leafs player to a Bruins player. When it comes to Jeremy Swayman, he's another interesting guy. He was originally drafted 111th overall by the Bruins and was looked at as a pretty major project, and he obviously went through a lot of years going through the NCAA and now with the AHL and NHL. At age 23, he's putting up production that you want to see out of a 23-year-old goaltender. This year in 38 games, pretty sizable sample size for a young, exciting goaltending prospect, has put up a .916 save percentage, a .233 goals against average. He was a little bit shaky in the beginning of the season, but really started to find his own, and with that relationship with Linus Ullmark and having all the goalie hugs, the positivity has been huge with the Bruins, and it's really affected Swayman's game. In my opinion, he will be the future of Bruins goaltending, and so far is looking excellent. Now again, I want to be as transparent and open as possible. After the 3rd team spot, this is where the draft starts to get a little bit muddy, I guess is the best way to put it, because honestly, after this 13th spot with Jeremy Swayman, there's a lot of players that, yes, have played in the NHL, but really haven't been all too productive or all that consistent in their careers so far. So after this is pretty much the Wild West, but we still got 2 spots to go, and at number 14, I'm gonna go with Eeli Tolvanen, who was originally drafted 30th overall by the Nashville Predators. This year in 73 games, got 10 goals, 12 assists for 22 points. The thing was, in his really first rookie season in 2021, he got 22 points in 40 games and was a really interesting player for the time on ice he was getting and also the power play production he was able to achieve. I thought this year we could see even a bigger step from him fully healthy, but it really didn't end up that way. He had a huge slump at the start of the season, got over a little bit, but again, only 22 points in 73 games, although he's been great defensively in some isolated statistics. At the same time, there's still a lot with Tolvanen's game that needs to grow. Now, I'm going to be honest, this number 15 spot is going to kind of come out of nowhere, and you might not expect it. You might not expect to see this player at the 15th best prospect spot of the 2017 draft, but you know what? I'm going to give this player a chance. He's done solid so far as a defenseman and has, I think, a pretty solid future with the Vegas Golden Knights. Going on to number 15, I'm going to move on to Nic Hague. You probably didn't expect to see Nic Hague in this video, but you know what? You should expect it, because Nic Hague so far in his NHL career has been quite solid. Now, he was originally drafted 34th overall by the Knights in the 2017 draft, and at age 23, he's played a couple of NHL seasons so far. This year, in 52 games, has 4 goals, 10 assists for 14 points. Last year in 2021, got 17 points, 52 games, and also played 10 NHL playoff games, getting 2 points, and looking like a solid part of that Golden Knights defense. I could see him becoming a solid and consistent defenseman for the Golden Knights to utilize. Again, that's where we're at 15th overall in this draft. I told you it was weird. But yeah, that is the 2017 NHL redraft. I mean, there's players like Filip and Cale I could have included on this list, but again, there's so many question marks with a ton of different players. I mean, Nolan Patrick, obviously, for some people might still be in the top 15. I definitely would not go down that road, but at the same time, the 2017 draft was a very weird one, even at the time, and continues to be. A lot has changed in the top 15, but hey, that's just what makes it interesting. So let me know in the comments down below what you guys think about my top 15. What do you agree? What do you disagree with? And let me know also what your top 15 would look like. Who do you see as the best players of the 2017 draft? Let me know your thoughts. Make sure you share this video with your friends. Hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more redrafts and more content just like this. And make sure you click on this card for all my hockey rankings content right on playlist. My name is Nathan. Have a great day. Drink some water. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.